Assalamu alaikum viewers, my name is Abdul Karim. My born name was Kenneth Edward Hassel. I was born in England. I had wonderful parents. I have three elder brothers. I've just come back from England and I was with my family. It's an interesting experience being a Muslim in a non-Muslim environment. It makes you a stronger Muslim, and it makes you realize the gift that you've been given. I studied in Europe and I spent a number of years working in London. I began searching for truth, al-haq in Arabic, and I traveled across many countries, getting involved in a number of different organizations with a religious background and getting very involved in some of them, and looking and finding, searching, as everyone is doing in this life. And eventually I arrived in Dubai and I embraced Islam in Sharia court, and my life changed slowly but surely. My motivation regarding Islam was not so much the Muslims, but the advice from the reverts like myself, who are much more knowledgeable and advanced in understanding of the religion. And actually the religion has many parallels with Christianity and Judaism, the other two major religions. And I come out of a primarily Christian background. I took the advice of these brothers, and I began to practice, because Islam is about adherence to the doctrine and practicing as a Muslim rather than rhetoric. So when you practice Islam on a daily basis, then your life begins to change and you notice that change. And there's a hadith which I think probably scholars, more knowledgeable people will understand, and I can't give you a reference to it. It's that when you pray 5 times a day, you cleanse yourself, you become pure. And I would strongly adhere to that hadith, which came from our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The one thing that I noticed about Muslims, and the Muslims that I knew, were in this part of the world, which is Dubai, because I live in the Emirates, and they practiced daily. And this seemed very significant to me, because the environment that I was brought up in the Christian environment, the faith was adhered to on certain times of the week, and in certain times of the year. And people could not answer the questions that I was seeking at the time. And around me, I would see people committing sins, and that seemed incoherent with the religion, any religion. Sins and life, they're not compatible. So the Muslims here were a better example of their practicing their faith. Actually, when I first embraced Islam, a colleague of mine said to me that I should not look at the Muslims as a guide to Islam. I don't necessarily agree with that, because there are some very, very loyal brothers and sisters in Islam around me. So I practiced. That's very, very important for any revert in any religion, is to practice the religion. And it's fundamental to the religion of Islam. Yes, I found, when I used to go back to visit my family in England, I had many discussions with them, and there's a huge amount of ignorance to the religion of Islam. This is the fundamental problem in the West. So my task was to enlighten people my family in particular, about the religion that I had embraced. And I went about this in a serious manner. I've just returned from England, and I have noticed that the ignorance has increased, and it's been fanned by very misguided propaganda machine that's operating. So, as a Muslim, a new Muslim, a revert, whatever you want to call us, I try to be a good example of the religion. Changes that I experienced were slow. The change comes slowly. It's not one day you're like this and then the next day you're like reborn. It's not like that at all. It's adherence, it's understanding, it's you make many mistakes. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, God as he's known in the West, he's all forgiving and all merciful. People should not forget this, and your mistakes are forgiven. I'm trying to be a good example of Islam to my family and the people I meet wherever I go. As a revert, it's a responsibility. You're a kind of advertisement for Islam. So whatever you do, whatever you say, is important. It's not to be taken lightly. This is the path of the path of truth, and it's a blessing to be on this path. And people should consider it very, very carefully. My family and friends in England are more interested now than ever in Islam. The events that have happened over the past decade have only increased people's awareness and interest in Islam. And I consider myself to be in a very important position, having come out of a society that has lost their way in life. And some of my interests at the moment are the secularism in the society, and the foundations of this. My understanding is that it's in the Middle Ages, and it's to do with business and commerce. And there are issues in religion, in particular in the Christian religion, regarding such issues as alcohol and interest. But if one looks into Christianity, you will find so many similarities between the three great religions. Because I have a family in Europe and I visit them as often as I can, I have taken upon myself to try to enlighten myself about the Christian faith more. Because when I'm with my family, I am representing Islam. And there are so many similarities between the three great religions that I found actually quite remarkable. On issues such as alcohol, interest on money, and something which I've just been involved with, which is a funeral of a family member. So if you look carefully into Christianity, you will see many clues to Islam as being the natural progression of the great religions, and one that you should really take very seriously. Because, as I mentioned, I have just returned from a funeral, and in Islam, funerals, signs that we must look at very carefully, that we are mortal in this life, and we should consider very carefully what we are doing in this life, and beyond the day-to-day activities that we get involved in.